Hello, viewers and podcast listeners. My name is Miles, and I'll be your host today here at X-Raised, where knowledge meets inspiration in the intricate dance of industry evolution. Now, some guests leave an impression. Others, they help shape the entire X-Raised ecosystem. And today's guest, let's just say we've invited him multiple times, and somehow he still brings new energy every single time. So, who are we welcoming back? Let me paint the picture. This gentleman has over 4 decades of global business experience, guiding companies to achieve not just compliance, but excellence, corporate responsibility, and true sustainability. He leads one of the most trusted ISO certified educational providers on the planet. He's helped redefine what learning means in today's world, and he's the powerful brain behind ACI Global Sleep, the e-Quip Academy, a platform that doesn't just train professionals, it transforms them. With innovations like the test drive experience and the DNA of ISO 21001 2018 running through its veins, this is not just your ordinary e-learning portal. It's the blueprint for building tomorrow's competent, ethical, and excellence driven leaders. So, here's one of my favorite guests who never settles for good when better is always on the table, the unstoppable managing director and CEO of ACI Global and e-Quip, Ian Erskine. Hi.
Hi, Miles, and welcome again, and welcome to all your lovely listeners. And yes, and we're going to be talking today about ACI Global's eQuip Academy. And I've been thinking of a way of introducing that. And there's something you said there is very interesting because the academy is where people come to do their training.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of the candidates come in. I'm the first person they see. And I guess that's what makes it so exciting for me. And also I try to make that exciting for them as well, because as you know, with our interviews before and after, we have a bit of a laugh and we have a bit of a tease of each other and things like that. So, and I guess the point I'm making here is when people come into the academy, I expect them to enjoy that journey. And basically, every single one says when they finish the course that it was really enjoyable. And I think that's the thing that now caps it off for me, is that now we have the academy, it's ISO certified. And behind that academy is not just myself, right, who's got somewhere between 30, 35 and 40, 45 years of experience. There's others like Marcus and Yolanda over in South Africa who have such a broad business experience. And this is what we give back to every one of the candidates that comes through the course. And this makes our academy so unique because it's built on business experience and it's not built on machines. So it's real people treating candidates, real people training real people. And those people that are doing the training are not just come by people that are employed to facilitate or assess a course. These people that come to us are business professionals in every one of their own fields, and that's one of the certification processes that we have to go through. For someone to be a facilitator of the course, number one, they have to have completed that course themselves. Number two, they have to have a minimum of something like 20 to 30 years of experience, right? And that's the uniqueness of ACI Global and its academy.
I see. First, I won't get tired of saying thank you, Ian, for always joining me and for bringing more value and vision to our community. And thank you also for that brief introduction to what eQuip Academy is basically about. But before we dive into eQuip Academy, let's dig into what's making it so relevant and timely, because we know you've helped organizations chase and achieve excellence for decades. And I remember my conversation with Hannes de Bruin of T3 Teams, who's been an eQuip user for over 2 decades now. But eQuip Academy feels like a true leap into the future. So, what professional development or certification gap did you see that made this the right moment to relaunch something this bold?
Well, I think what made it so relevant today was, and I still say it's manic. It's manic. Is the push to artificial intelligence and a broader field of machine learning. And and to cap off what I've just said there is we've just attended, and Marcus has just attended a major educational conference here in Sydney over 2 days. And, he's met somewhere between 50 and 80 people. And not one of those people have been able to explain the algorithms behind AI and machine learning.
Mm-hmm.
No one's been able to fully explain where that personal data ends up, right? And that's the scary thing for me. So our platform actually hasn't changed, but what you've said is quite right. We're now pushing it out there and sort of relaunching and bringing it further to people's attention to make the point is our platform is about people. It's not about machines. Our platform is about people, ongoing training of people, professional development. And in some respects, and we go back to one of my major fears in reference to artificial intelligence or human intelligence mining. We actually do that in such a way that people, as they go through their assessments of a course, they can actually pump my mind. Okay, so I'm assessing their question, right, which they've answered, and I might ask a couple of routine questions. Have you thought about this in this process, right? And to support that question, I can give them lots of examples of how that actually works in a real business, a real workplace scenario, to the point where they can say, wow, that's a good idea. I'll take that away. I might even redo the assessment, okay, which they do. They then redo the assessment and it becomes so much more meaningful. And then they then have a joke with me. They say, oh, you've been around so long and so forth. And I say, yes. And I say, as we go, I'll tell you lots more stories, actual stories that have happened to me, right? Some good, some bad. And one of the things that we try to emphasize within each of our courses is people have to be prepared to change, because life is just not, what's the word, having a wine every day, ho hum, we'll get to the end of the day and everything will be fine. Little things crop up, okay, and you have to be prepared to change. And in our library, we have the little book, Who Moved My Cheese? It's about 2 mice and 2 little people. Now, it's quite obvious what the story's about. The story's about that the actual house where the mice were living were getting the scraps and so forth, and living, having their families, getting fat and so forth. But all of a sudden, those people ended up moving away. The house fell into disrepute, and all of a sudden there was no food, and hence the story, right? And this is what life is about. Life is a journey of learning from your experiences, right? And this is what makes it so exciting for myself and Marcus and Hannes and Yolanda, is we can talk to our candidates. We can give them those experiences, right? And it helps them broaden and learn from those experiences and grow and continually grow, because that's one of the strengths of the platforms, is that it's built in such a way is that it's professional development, ongoing learning all the time. So their skills are being assessed, evaluated, they're taking to the next level each time they want to. And again, it's that enjoyable journey that's built on people, for people.
It's about improving the value of what people bring into their organization. And I always admire how you meet professionals where they are, but taking them further than they expected, Ian. Something that, as you said, they will truly enjoy while learning and growing.
Yes, and again, I think you've heard me tell the story about the founder of Google telling the story when they were testing out the algorithms and the chatbot and so forth. And part of it was for the chatbot to recognise on the other side was a cat. So, okay, so it recognised a cat and came, and there were a couple of questions were asked, what does a cat do? It purrs and so forth. And then the head of Google thought to himself, well, how am I going to change this to put a bit of a challenge to the chatbot? So he put a opaque piece of glass in front of the camera, so it blocked off the camera. And then he asked a question, what now do you see? Oh, I see a cat. And he said back to the chatbot, he said, no, you don't see the cat because the cat's not there anymore. But it is there. No, it's not there anymore. And then the chatbot started to make up things. Oh, it's a rabbit. Oh, it's a real person. No, there's no one there because I've closed off the camera.
It's hallucinating.
And that's what I'm saying. So what he was demonstrating there was that no time will there ever be able to be done where the algorithms will be able to detect human intuition, right? The feelings. And again, that's what I go back to our platform, where it's built on one-on-one training, examining, assessing from the facilitator or the mentor to the candidate. And they are learning all the time, not just from the notes and the questions they answer and the examples that they've asked to put together, right? They're also learning from people like myself. And again, that's why I think it makes me so happy at the end of the day to have completed my assessment marking and things like that and spoken specifically with each of the candidates, because again, that's what we also do. We actually speak to them one-on-one. Okay, we have our teams crosses and so forth. And even as part of the program is that we actually like to actually meet them in person on an annual or regular basis. Even if that's just a point where we get together for a lunch or a cup of coffee, or we get together to do an audit on their organisation, but it's just for them to get to know me, right? But above all, it's for me to be able to see them within their own workplace, how they actually assess little incidents that come up, right? And I can give you some examples of that. We'll go for a walk around their workplace, right? And I'll have a look and I might stop and I say, hold on a minute. If you just have a look and I'll just use any name. I said, look at Sally over there. Look at where she's looking at her screen, right? And you can see that she's actually peering up. So her neck is bent, right? And I say, these are the things that you need to be looking out for, because that's posture, incorrect posture. And then there's the other little things where I always look underneath people's desks to see how many leads are lying loose and things like that from their computers and their phones and so forth. And I say, well, those leads need to be untangled and away from people's feet, because if they're not, they'll eventually be a hazard. And again, this gives you the chance to be able to move around, talking to the person. They're listening to what I'm saying. I'm listening to what they're observing or watching what they're observing. And that's part of that learning journey, which a machine can never replace the human side of it, because the human side of it, that's the important part of the learning. Okay.
And from whom is it better to learn this? Of course, from an experienced professional and passionate in this field like you, Ian. And with that concept and story in mind, let's talk about the engine behind all this. Because e-Quip is not just a typical digital classroom. It's a living, as you said earlier, it's evolving. It's an evolving platform. How exactly is it reshaping how people learn to lead, especially in this hybrid, compliance-heavy world we're all operating in now?
Well, what we're looking at this very present time is a mechanism or a process where the candidate can actually be working in the portal, so they can be working on one of their assessments. But what we're looking at the moment is a system where they can have, for argument's sake, a notepad, okay? And I always like to be able to, when I go into a meeting, like to be able to jot down notes, right? And often when I train my auditors, some of them come back to me and say, "Oh, we want to be able to take our laptop in and do it then and there on the spot." And I say to them, no, because if you do that and you're head down taking notes, you're not looking at the candidate, looking at the employee or the managing director, right? So you're not understanding their eye movements, you're not understanding their mannerisms and things like this, which is oh so important. If you're going to be asking a question, you have to look at the person after you ask them the question for their response, right? And then they say, "Oh, how do you do it?" And I say, "I just jot little notes down as I go through the audit," right? But a lot of the time, I challenge myself. I put it into my brain, okay? I remember it, okay? So you go away in the afternoon and you physically jot down what you've memorized. And then you formalise sentences and paragraphs which go into explaining what you've learned, right? And this is where the real living part of the system works, because as I say, you've got your facilitator and your mentor, you've got your candidate, and you're both learning from each other. And quite often, I will go back to the candidate in some respects and say, "Guess what? I've actually learned something today. You've explained something to me and you've demonstrated to me how you do that process," right? And I often find this when I do my food safety audits and HACCP audits, and Yolanda from South Africa is the same. Quite often we'll go out and do a food safety HACCP audit, and can see either it's a chef or it's a person just working around tables and things like that, which may have come up with a very simple idea of hygiene or a simple way of cleaning something. And you say to them, "Wow, that's a great idea," you know? And I remember when hygiene balls were first introduced, I actually went in and did a cafe near our opera house. And one of the first things I do when I do a spot HACCP and food safety audit, I do a inspection of where there could be food safety hazards. Okay, so I do a little test at the back of the chairs where people put their hands. I do a check around glasses, go into the kitchen and check around the dishwasher and places like that. And at this place, I immediately knew there was an issue, because when I walked past the dishwasher, there was steam and heat and everything coming out from the door.
Okay.
Anyway, so I walked on by and I said, "I think you should check that because I think the seal's broken." Anyway, so I went back and I did all my tests and had them all tested and everything and came back with the results. And guess where the highest level of bacteria was?
Oh.
Okay. Fresh glasses out of the dishwasher.
Right.
And so I mentioned this to them and I said, "Remember what I said about the dishwasher?" "Oh, yes, Mr. Erskine, that's right. One of the seals is not right." And I said, "Okay, so let's go and have a look," right? And it was defective, right? And that's where the bacteria was on the glasses. Now, the second most important part where I found bacteria was in the back of the chairs, where people had come in from wherever, put their hand on the seats, moved the seats back, sat down in the seats, right? So I said, I looked at the managing director or the head person at the place, at the cafe, and I said, "Have you thought of what you may do?" Now, at this time, this is many years ago, in America, it was the big thing. They had what they called hygiene balls. So you'd walk in the front door and a little hygiene ball, you rub your hands and sanitize, you clean your hands and go and find your table and sit down. And I still find they're magnificent because it's astounding when I do my swab testing, the amount of bacteria I find at the back of chairs from people walking off the street, right? Whereas if they had a little sanitizer bottle or whatever to sanitize your hands before you went and sat down, that will eliminate that.
Yeah.
Because bacteria is very easily transmitted, because the waitress can come along and put their hand on the back of that chair, right? All of a sudden her hands are infected. She goes into the kitchen to pick up plates, to bring it put down on the table, she's spreading that bacteria. And the point I make to people in getting that message across, right, and again, this is the benefit of the ACI Global e-Quip Academy and the lack of machines. This is one-on-one people we're talking about, right?
Yes.
The facilitator mentor, like Yolanda in South Africa, talking to her candidates, getting these messages across, right, one-on-one, because it's all to do with people, okay? That is the strength. That's where we stand above everyone else, and we will continue to lead the world in a desire to explain, no, we have to remain people-focused on everything we do.
Yeah. And I completely agree. That makes so much sense, Ian. Leadership today is more than about knowledge. It should also focus on navigation. And from what you're describing, eQuip has been here handing out people the right way and track their learning progress. And one thing I found really fascinating is that eQuip offers a test drive, which is very rare in this space. So what does this kind of transparency say about ACI Global's confidence in its methods, and how is it changing how professionals interact with certification programs?
Well, it's interesting because people say, oh, how can you do that? Because you've got all the standards which we provide to people free, and because they pay for that in the course when they do it. But when we give the test drive, we don't give them access into the standards library, obviously, right? But we have nothing to hide, okay? Our courses are built on experience. They're built on my experience, Yolanda's, Hannes's, Marcus's, our experience out in the world as it is today.
Yes.
And it's quite amazing how quickly that is changing because, again, the ability to give people a test drive, they can go in and have a look. And one part of the test drive is they have an opportunity to give us their understanding of what a quality organisation is all about, right? And how people operate within that organisation. Now, it's interesting, even the audit that I did yesterday, I came up with this scenario where people are being encouraged to work from home and so forth. And I'm saying to the senior managers, how do you feel about that? Right? And some of them are concerned, and their main concern is their ability to mentor an employee, first of all, coming into the organisation and stepping up different skill levels, stepping up all the time. Now, it's going to be very difficult to do that working from home because you don't have that one-on-one mentoring and facilitating. Now, people say, oh, yes, but you can do that on Teams. It's not the same. If you're sitting in a room one-on-one or you're working within an office space one-on-one, it's not only the camaraderie, but it's the persona. It's the feeling you get, the mannerisms you see, how they deal with different things. And the classic example is where I like to sit with a receptionist whilst they take calls. And I was sitting with this, and this was some years ago, but I was sitting with this receptionist. She took this call and it wasn't on speakerphone, but I could see as the conversation went, the customer was becoming more and more agitated to the point where they were becoming very loud. Okay, now I could see the persona of the receptionist beginning to change. They were actually feeling threatened. You could see that in their mannerism, right? And all of a sudden, I leant a little bit forward and looked the receptionist in the eye and basically said, you have to stop. I got her to put a hand over the phone speaker. I said, you have to stop this now because you are in a position where you're being abused, right? So she then took charge and she said, excuse me, madam, I feel slightly threatened by the way you're now talking to me, which would put the customer into an even worse situation. She began to even yell even more to the point where the receptionist simply said, look, I'm going to stop the conversation right now. I will actually have someone ring you back in 5 minutes It
Uh-huh.
won't be me. Someone will ring you back in 5 minutes because I am not going to take the abuse over the phone, and hung up. Right? And I applauded her. I said, well done. That's how you, because no one in the workplace must feel threatened or abused in any way, whether that's a customer or whether that's a fellow employee.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It's a no-go.
Yeah.
So in this situation, she got her senior manager to ring the customer. And it was interesting because herein was a way where she learned, because the senior manager was able to talk the customer through the issues she had
Mm-hmm.
with what was wrong, right, to the point where the customer actually came back, apologised, right, and said, look, I was completely out of order, but I was frustrated. It was my inability to get a message across to the receptionist, right? I
Mm-hmm.
do apologise. And it was a situation where there was mentoring. The receptionist was able to learn from that example, right? But also on the other side, the customer was able to learn, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm demonstrating here is we're talking about people one-on-one, human intuition,
Yeah,
okay? Their people's minds, their speech, their mannerisms. You can't do this with machines and AI.
of course.
This is why we have to push so hard and say we value our careers, right? As an employee, we're going to demonstrate value add on a continuous base back to our organisation
Mm-hmm.
to demonstrate that's why we are such an important part of the organisation.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that's pretty bold, confident, very transparent, and smart indeed, Ian. And of course, everyone loves free sample, and who doesn't love a no pressure joyride in something so brilliant?
Yes, and just going back to the test drive, and ultimately what happens with the test drive, we
Mhm.
allow them in, and as part of the test drive, that we hook them up on Teams and things like that, and talk them through every step of the process, and
Yeah.
then give them up to 8 hours to have a bit of a play around by themselves, right? And it's interesting. Most people actually don't take that extra 8 hours. They just say, "This is brilliant. Can I sign up now?" And we simply said, just log off, sign on, pay for your course, and basically you're ready to go. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's basically. And again, we are completely open and transparent. We have
Mm-hmm.
nothing to hide,
Mm-hmm.
right? And again, part of the process of nothing to hide, we put ourselves out to ISO third-party certification on an annual basis, right? But we even take that even to the next step where we actually have independent people come in and audit our processes on an
Mm-hmm.
on hack basis, right?
Yeah.
Particularly now, the way information security data and AI is happening, we're actually part of our process is that we have an organisation that literally physically goes in to break in, to try and break in and destroy something, right? And basically, over the last three tests, they've had no incidents of being able to break anything. All our security patches are up to date. Our SO2's been done, and so yeah, so we open ourselves up to independent third-party audits to make
Mm-hmm.
sure everything's open and transparent and
Yeah.
works correctly.
Mm-hmm. Well, no wonder, Ian, you're changing how trust is built in continuous learning. You're making it very human as well. And one of
Yes.
my favorite ACI slogans is making quality contagious. So here's the real question. How is eQuip turning that into more than a motto, especially when it comes to embedding ISO standards into daily business practice, not just, the usual documentation?
Well, this is a challenge to everyone. It's a challenge to the facilitators and the mentors, and also all their candidates. And the challenge is on a two-way basis is as the assessments are completed and they move on, they must be able to demonstrate at all times that they've been able to add value to their sponsoring organisation in the assessment that they have undertaken, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, for argument's sake, that could be on communication. Okay.
Yes.
Now, one of the biggest challenges, as you've heard me say before, in reference to communications, is the ability to be able to ask that question and not have a perceived answer in your own head
Mm-hmm.
of what that answer is going to be.
Right.
That's the biggest challenge that I find people when we talk about communication is that's where quite often it breaks down because we ourselves have a piece perceived answer in our heads to what that question may or may well be. And the
Mm-hmm.
most amazing thing is if you have an open mind when you ask that question, it's quite amazing. And it's quite often I find a situation, I challenge myself into that same situation. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, I've got lots of experience. I've got to try and push that out to one side,
Mm-hmm.
have an open book when I ask a question. And quite often I will go back to the candidate and say, wow, that's a magnificent way of looking at it. I never thought of doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go away and I'm a better person for it. They obviously are, their organisation are as well. And
Mm-hmm.
again, going back to what we're talking about here and the importance of people over people apart from machine to machine or machine to people,
Mm-hmm.
people against people discussing, communicating, learning on the journey together, because that's the point we make with our academy. It's a journey between the candidate and their facilitators and their mentors,
Mm-hmm.
because when the candidate comes into the academy, they immediately have assigned their own personal facilitator and mentor
Mm-hmm.
who has many years of experience. That's basically, and it can be for the life of their training, that they take on that person as their mentor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love that, making quality more like a behavior, not just a binder. It's like you're providing organizations the most efficient formula in leading consistently, confidently, and maybe even with a little flair. So,
Yeah.
finally, let's look ahead, Ian. How do you see the role of equip evolving in preparing the next gen or the next generation of leaders, ones who don't just, meet global standards, but help shape them? Also, what's your boldest hope for those logging into the academy for the first time?
Well, I guess the hope is that they themselves can see the potential.
Mm-hmm.
They themselves can see the confidence of them going to their leaders or the owners of the business
Mm-hmm.
and saying, this is a great platform. We together can add traction to the business. We can grow together. And that's where the next level and the next strength of the ACI Global Academy is that it's the two-way street. It's the candidate, it's the organisation together, and the organisation together works through educating their people, okay, to continually gain traction, to continually achieve sustained success, right? And in that sustained success, they are continually conforming so as they achieve compliance.
Ah.
And going back to what we were demonstrating there, when we talk about quality is contagious, the old catch cry is so true. Do
Mm-hmm.
it once, do it right.
I
There are
agree.
no grey areas between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, I often become a little bit annoyed when I often hear people talk, and particularly when they're talking about politics, they're talking about, oh, he's too far right, or he's too far left, or he's centre right, or he's centre left. I always like to bring the debate back to no, it's either right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's
Yeah.
no grey areas in between. And the challenge everyone has is when they're completing a task, right? They may be rushing to get home, or the senior manager might be pushing them to achieve extra targets and things like that. At all times, everyone has to say, step back, don't cross that area between right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do it once and you have to do it right. Now, if you have that mantra, and that's the mantra that we carry on within the ACI Global Academy and e-Quip.
Mm-hmm.
That's the philosophy we put to all our trainees, our facilitators, and our mentors.
Well said. That's a legacy work, Ian, teaching them and shaping the kind of leadership the world genuinely needs. And if your track record says anything, that vision is already well on its way. Again, there are no gray areas between right and wrong indeed. And What an info-filled conversation once again, Ian. Thank you so much for always sharing your wisdom generously, your expertise, and that forward-thinking energy that honestly just makes the rest of us want to do better. I really
Thank
appreciate it.
you. Thank you again, Miles, and I look forward to next week's episode.
Same here. Thank you, Ian. Well, what Ian and I talk about today just reminds us that education is definitely equipping people to navigate complexity with confidence and purpose. So, whether you're an organization hungry for improvement or a professional ready to level up, Equip Academy seems like the great place to start. So head over to equip.com, that's e-quip.com, to boost your competency, benchmark your team's progress, and simply experience ISO training done right. Better yet, go to the test drive. And that's it for this episode of X Rays. Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to bookmark us and share this episode. Until next time, this has been your host, Miles. Stay focused and inspired with X Rays.